Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Well, recently I spent some time playing Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, the CRPG ported now over to PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One. I played the PS4 version on the PS5, and I want to thank Owlcat Games for providing me with a code for reviewing the game. I love real-time with pause RPGs in a D&D style setting, so like Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Dragon Age Origins, and Pillars of Eternity are some of my all-time favorite games. But I greatly these days, for years now, prefer to play them on console with a gamepad UI. Pathfinder Kingmaker was my number 2 game of the year when it released on PlayStation 4, although it dropped in my estimation due to lots of bugs and crashing that were never truly fixed. Thankfully, players eventually discovered that if you limit your save files and items in your inventory, the crashing issues could be greatly reduced. So in the end, after a year-long break, I did really enjoy finishing up Pathfinder Kingmaker, but of course, I had reservations about Wrath of the Righteous. However, most of those reservations quickly faded as I started playing the game in its PlayStation 4 edition on my PlayStation 5, and I've also seen and heard indications online that the reason that that Kingmaker wasn't updated may have been related to kind of a publisher issue that the developers had no control over. That information is still kind of just slowly emerging right now, so there are several reasons, both in terms of my personal experience so far with Wrath of the Righteous and with some information that's coming out, that indicate to me together that the likelihood of them patching this game and really ensuring that it's a good experience on consoles, that likelihood is stronger with Wrath of the Righteous. But even aside from that, it's already a much smoother experience that I'm having with Wrath of the Righteous compared to the opening hours of Kingmaker. The PlayStation 4 control scheme is pretty much identical to that of Kingmaker on PlayStation 4, with few changes and none that have put me off. You again hold the left or right trigger to bring up character or menu selection, and from there use the crosspad or left analog stick to navigate inventory and other menus in a very intuitive way. I find you are not asked to use an analog stick just to control a mouse cursor online. No, it's very much a custom console gamepad UI that's been put into this game, and it really makes it a nice experience. If you want, you can watch my review of Pathfinder Kingmaker. I'll put a link below the video version of this review to help you get to that, and in there I go into much more detail about the control scheme and what it's like playing that type of game, Kingmaker in particular, on a gamepad. But so little has changed that I'll just say here that I'm really happy with the Wrath of the Righteous control scheme and how I'm experiencing it so far. As for how it looks and performs, of course, that's really significant given what happened with Kingmaker. I'll say up front that I've played about 12 hours of the game since it launched. For the PlayStation 4, that's the version I'm playing, but on my PlayStation 5. So I can't speak to just the core vanilla PlayStation 4 experience. But I'm playing the PlayStation 4 version on a PS5 with a version that's up to date as of this recording on October 11th, 2022. But I mean, I started playing it the day that it launched, and from then until now, I have been pretty happy with how it runs and looks. The camera allows for a much closer look at characters and objects than Kingmaker did, especially in pre-choreographed in-engine cutscenes, which seem to be new to this installment of the series. I like some of how this adds cinematic flavor to the storytelling, but I was completely happy with the more fixed camera of Kingmaker, and sometimes the close-ups in Wrath of the Righteous, at least in the PS4 version, showcase some low detail or stretched out textures that kind of take me out of the experience a bit. Even so, it has that great classic D&D and Pathfinder fantasy artwork aesthetic that I just never get tired of. The score may even be more richly produced than the first game, which I already thought highly of the score of the original game. I'm already noticing in this one, though, more epic choral vocals, which is cool and fits the medieval religious aesthetic relevant to the story. I don't have anything to say about the voice acting because I just turn it off. I get impatient with voice actors to finish their delivery so I can get on with the scene, and it's usually in these types of games not entirely voice acted anyway, which is my understanding for this game as well. I might be noticing a bit more prose mixed in with the dialogue I'm reading. I'm not sure about that. But either it's interesting enough to keep me engaged, or I'm developing a tolerance for it, I don't know. Although my preference, I think, would still be to just read dialogue, or almost entirely dialogue instead of prose. Either way, you know, be prepared to do a lot of reading compared to AAA RPGs that have everything voiced. Now, speaking along those lines, story is almost never what draws me into RPGs, which people may find ironic. But really, it's the exception would be the story I create as I interact with the world and NPCs. I get bored quickly with cutscenes, and I just don't find that many stories all that fascinating in video games these days. But it's my ability to affect the world either through my actions or through dialogue interactions, and I'm grateful to already see that the varied dialogue choices of Kingmaker are again present here, allowing me to have a fairly complex headcanon for my character and justification in my mind for his sometimes inconsistent behavioral choices. As for gameplay, it's mostly more of what I loved about Pathfinder Kingmaker, but there seem to be a lot more character class options, along with the returning multi-class option from Kingmaker. However, I'm pretty traditional, and as soon as I have the funds, I plan to drop the NPC companions the story provides for a crew of paid mercenaries I custom design to fill those simple core class roles like Fighter, Cleric, Thief, and Wizard. So far, the companions I've met have character classes I'm not familiar with and really don't want to learn how to play, and mercenary recruitment is way too expensive right now, so I'm a little bummed about that. I really wanted, after my experience with Kingmaker, to just start this story, this game, with blank slate characters that don't have backstories or likes and dislikes I have to worry about, that I'll just give them the money and they are my party and they will stay with me, you know. My experience with Kingmaker taught me that if you don't tickle the fancies of each companion, you're probably going to have them die or turn on you at some point. And my character leading the party, my standard, typical bitter old wizard Elderast, has no patience for that kind of crap. And neither do I, so I'm hoping to just boot these companions as soon as possible for people that I create that are only interested in the money I give them at the start, and they'll just be with me to the bitter end. Combat, again, allows for either a turn-based mode or real-time with pause mode, but since real-time with pause games are pretty rare, even in this renaissance of isometric Western RPGs we've had in the last handful of years, I haven't even bothered trying turn-based mode. I much prefer to just dial down the difficulty and keep it in real-time with pause mode, managing my party in a more supervisory role rather than as a micromanaging tactician. And Wrath of the Righteous totally lets me do that so far, even to the point that my lack of familiarity with companion classes does not inhibit my progression in combat. Very much appreciated by me. In fact, the difficulty options are once again so flexible and accessible throughout the game that flexible and accessible at any time throughout the game, that means that I can adjust them depending on my mood, you know, how much I want a story and exploration experience on one night versus maybe a night of play where I feel and I want to feel and appreciate every loot or skill upgrade as they come along. Because from night to night after a day of work, I might feel a little bit different in terms of what I want out of the game. So those difficulty experiences, options, are really, really appreciated by me. Unfortunately, a major issue I had with Pathfinder Kingmaker returns here, and that's the quest log and the lack of clear guidance. Now, I know it's popular today to not want a game to hold your hand with a lot of quest markers, and I respect that desire and that interest and that taste on the part of many gamers, but I wish it was an option. And mechanically, Wrath of the Righteous doesn't always trigger events like I think it should, that to help you resolve or advance quests. For example, although I had read a journal entry I found in some, pocket of a guy that I killed, that reading it gave me the info I needed to access a secret door, but the door could not be interacted with unless I actually had the journal entry in my inventory, or perhaps as long as maybe just putting it in my inventory initially would have triggered that. I don't know. But it wasn't enough to just read it, keeping it on the body of the corpse, and then just leaving it there. I had to pick it off of the corpse in order to trigger that. I found out later after some frustration and confusion. So I guess I'm picking up every dumb piece of paper on every corpse from now on. And even though that scenario is not the norm, the descriptions in quest log entries, both in Kingmaker and in Wrath of the Righteous, can be so vague that I, long ago, resigned myself to playing these games with a walkthrough tab open on my PC at all times. That's not a deal-breaking nuisance by any means, but undeniably it is a nuisance for me. In terms of themes, I always like to explore the moral, philosophical, or spiritual themes in the entertainment that I take in to see if there's anything that triggers some worthwhile thought or conversation. And I think it's very interesting that the protagonist faction that you were kind of swept up to be a part of is called Crusaders. And it certainly evokes more of a medieval, possibly Christian cultural aesthetic in terms of the designs of the armor. I mean, that's what it's evoking, is the medieval kind of Christian nations, and rather than, for example, an Eastern or a Middle Eastern aesthetic to armor and culture and stuff like that. And so the Crusaders are definitely kind of inspired, at least aesthetically, from Christian Crusaders, and they're portrayed fairly positively, or at least imperfectly so far. Yet the real Crusaders of our history, or the Crusades, I should say, of history were, horrible and very unchristian affairs for their brutal and warlike nature. Although, there may have been some misguided and well-intentioned Christians involved. I don't know. We are messy as human beings. And I appreciate that is kind of represented in what I've seen so far in Kingmaker, and then again here, even as they're leaning into this thing that evokes the real-world Crusades, they're leaning into kind of like a messiness where it's not really super white hat and black hat and stuff. Usually in games like this, if there's organized religion that's evoking aesthetically Christians, then they're just a bunch of hypocritical jerks, But I'm not getting that sense from the faction of Crusaders in this game. There's some of that in the mix, but I mean, it's not like across the board. Now, I don't really know the lore and history of the Pathfinder world, despite having played both tabletop Pathfinder games in the form of the adventure card game series, which I've bought, several of those and all their expansions and stuff, and video games now with Kingmaker and this one, despite that experience, I'm not really familiar. I don't really know the lore and history of the Pathfinder world, but I do get the sense that it has a little more nuance in its representation of Christian-inspired organized religion when compared to, say, the world of Dragon Age, for example. And with a story about a passionate theistic faction going to war against a race of demons, I mean, charged with that backdrop, I can't help but be more tuned in to the religious, moral, and spiritual ideas the story is playing with. And there's a lot there that, if you're willing, I think will lead to some worthwhile thought and reflection on maybe your own beliefs and how you choose to live them out in your relationships and in what you do with your life. In summary, I am having a great time with Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous so far. It came at the right moment when I had a resurging hunger for this type of game, and yet it's not setting my world on fire. In fact, I suspect I will finish my current playthrough of the original Baldur's Gate on PS4 that I started a month or so ago before coming back to give Wrath of the Righteous my full attention. So a good experience, but it's not like, oh my gosh, drop everything and play this, Pater. But when I do come back to it, I really do think I'll have a great experience waiting for me. And in fact, based on my time with the first 12 hours, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous is very likely to be either my number 2 or maybe even my number 1 game released this year. We'll see. There's a couple more games at least that I want to try before I make that final decision. Anyway, I hope something in all that was useful to you. Please let me know in the comments or get in touch with me another way if you have any specific questions that I can try to address. As always, I hope you'll check out the Christian Geek Central podcast, where in my Geek Week segment, I do eventually plan to provide my updated thoughts on Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. It is time again for Christian Geek Central's annual Game Save event, fundraising for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which provides free treatment for children facing life or death circumstances and shares its cutting-edge life-saving research with hospitals all over the world. You're still welcome to join the Game Save team by following the link in the description below. And once again this year, I'm drawing attention to our team's fundraising by performing a 24-hour marathon of video gaming that I will stream live on youtube.com/Christian Geek Central beginning 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Saturday, November 5th. You can donate or get more info by clicking on my fundraising page in the links below, where you'll also find incentives and rewards for doing so. For $5, choose a topic for me to share my sometimes overly strong opinions on during my live stream. For $10, you get the previous reward and a download code for a free copy of the Spirit Blade Special Edition audio drama. For $20, you get the previous rewards and you can choose a game for me to play during my November 5th live stream, pick a favorite, or torture me with something terrible or rage-inducingly difficult. For $30, you get the previous rewards and you can choose a song for me to sing during my November 5th live stream, pick an old favorite of yours, or just make me humiliate and torture myself with something no one wants to hear. And for $50, you get the previous rewards and a download code for every MP3 product at spiritblade.com. That's a $90 value. On top of that, I have set fundraising milestones that will unlock strange and unusual happenings as I reach them. At $200, I'll have a free download day for everyone who visits spiritblade.com on November 12th. And as my total goes beyond $200, I'll unlock increasingly more content for the free download day. And depending on how far beyond $200 my fundraising goes, during my November 5th live stream, I will cover my face in peanut butter and jelly while talking about horror movies, put on a pair of frozen socks and a frozen t-shirt at the same time, shoot water up my nose with a turkey baster, and have my wife Holly play a video game with me for 30 minutes. And if I reach a personal fundraising total of $500 or more, I will resume and complete, before the end of the year, my live stream Let's Play series for Fallout New Vegas as a Terminator. I like your gun. Attempting to do so in a single sitting. That could take as much as 20 hours or more based on how long tobeat.com averages. We will find out together if I reach $500. Finally, if I reach my $500 goal by the end of Thursday, October 20th, I will do a 4-hour live stream before the end of the year, playing only the most frustratingly difficult games in my collection. Since my last Get Good live stream, I've added some more titles to the list that will probably be like beating my face against a wall, and you can bring that about if you help me reach $500 by the end of October 20th. Now, there are some stipulations and time limits on those rewards and milestones, so quickly follow the link below to my fundraising page for all the details. I hope you'll be a part of helping me and the Christian Geek Central Game Save team do some good for some kids who really need it. And then please join me at youtube.com/Christian Geek Central for my 24-hour marathon starting at 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Saturday, November 5th. Hope to see you then.
Oh my gosh. This is all kinds of wrong.